Hello there. As you can tell from the expression on my face, I am most happy because it's Friday. Fridays are one of the most beautiful days of the week, not only because do we have stimulating conversations on AM Prime, as we do every other day, but on a Friday I'm particularly grateful for young people for raising their voices. I consider myself to be a young person. I hope the young people in the studio also consider me to be a young people. But Friday is also wonderful because as the clock ticks and we get nearer to the sunrise and AM Prime ends, it means that the weekend begins. And in doing so, I feel a great sense of appreciation, so much so I'm a bit more emotional this morning because though the week flew by really quickly, in some instances it really dragged. So to bring us some refreshing conversation, I'm joined by a former national and regional youth parliamentarian, the Honourable, or in the instance, former Honourable Chris Hossain. Good morning, Chris. Welcome back to AM Prime.
Good morning. You in a very good mood this morning.
But of course, I am. Can't you tell? Yeah. My eyes are jumping up with joy. Bloody can't keep them open. Chris, how are you? How was your week?
My week I was very productive this week. I had a number of items to get done in the week, and I think I got it done to the best of my ability. You know, as a young person, a young professional, I graduated last year. So we sometimes put so many expectations on ourselves and how we try to treat with our goals or even our ambitions. And I'm trying to manage those expectations of myself and even the persons around me. And so I think I had a productive week. Nothing to complain about. You know, God is great all the time, God is great.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, yeah, actually a lot got done this week and a lot was said this week and a lot has transpired. One such is the Minister of National Security, whom, by the way, I admire very much. I say that because I think he's a very nice person. If you want to talk about his duties and responsibilities of minister, then I can't beat you in any debate. But as an individual, he's quite a nice person, and he said, he's referenced that there are 3 challenges in Trinidad and Tobago: a lack of productivity, an overwhelming presence of corruption, interesting, and bacchanal. Now, bacchanal, saying that this undermines the very lofty things we plan and think about. Chris, how does bacchanal actually undermine any sort of planning in Trinidad? Mind you, some people might say, Keaton, is that a rhetorical question? Ajay, let me hear, Ajay will join us shortly. Chris?
Yeah. So I saw the headline and it would have said that he's too much bacchanal in TNT, and I found the headline to be a bit interesting because when you read the entire article, that is not all that he said. Actually, it had a lot of things to unpack in that article. But does bacchanal undermine? I think, you know, we have a little culture in Trinidad sometimes. We like a little bacchanal, right? I think it might add a little layer of spice to certain interests or conversations, but sometimes, especially in politics and in real serious conversations, I think lessening on the bacchanal and even the political picong is important because sticking to substance is always will augur well in our productivity, as Minister Hines spoke about. So do we have a bit? We actually do. Yeah, it has in fact, we actually do. But here's the thing though, Keaton. I think that our politicians contribute to the bacchanal. So as much as we, you know, create a space where we discuss that we have too much bacchanal, but they are a part of adding that to the public discourse. I mean, you look at the parliament, you look at the way they debate, you look at the interviews, and there's a lot of bacchanal and chaos and sometimes confusion happening where they, you know, they seem more interested in vilifying each other rather than sticking to substance. So I agree with him, but whilst I agree with him as a politician, he himself and all politicians, I've noticed that they cling a lot to bacchanal type politics rather than substance based.
Do you think that the subscription to bacchanal type politics is most appealing? Is it that it's most appealing, or is it the only thing that Trinbagonians truly understand? And that may sound insulting, but to be quite frank with you, I don't know if people have the patience or the capacity to have an intellectual, constructive conversation or debate.
Well, in politics, it's about the art of persuasion, right? That's ideally that's what they're seeking to do. And so there's a message, there's the messenger, the politicians, and the person they're trying to convey the message to. And the way that you would test if the message would have resonated would have been in an election. And I've said this maybe every week on AM Prime. When we look at the last voter turnouts for the local government election, with that whopping 30.34%, what we do know is that bacchanal type politics, it didn't really augur well with the population, regardless of the campaigns put forward by the major political parties. And what I am noticing is that as we mature as a country, as a democratic nation, I think we are shifting away from that because persons are becoming uninterested in bacchanal politics.
Do you really think that we're maturing as a nation? It depends on how you're referencing the word mature. Are you referring to us, our age as an independent nation, or are you referring to our ability to actually handle complex situations and deal with the challenges placed in front of us?
I think it's a second one, and the reason I would say it's a second one is because we have been fortunate to be a part of at least the millennial group and also the Generation Z. We have been fortunate to be a part of government policies. For example, I'll give you some examples. When it comes to education, the dollar for dollar program, the GATE program, the expansion of GATE under the People's Partnership. Even now, GATE is, would have been, well, it was a little bit closed and now it was reopened in a way for undergraduate programs. So we have been, so you have a more educated population looking on and a wider group of persons that may be able to make a more informed decision. But as we discussed on the show before, as much as you may be educated within a particular academic field, it doesn't always assist you when it comes to the politics in this country, because we have discussed where I think politics, we need a whole subject dedicated to politics and proper history of Trinidad and Tobago in our primary school curriculum. And I've spoken about that, so that you allow persons from a very early age to get interested, understand the political process. What does it mean? And it's not a bad process, you know. Lawmakers, they have a critical job in this country. And so you want to get the widest amount of participation in any election. So I think when politicians stick to the bacchanal type politics, you know, you get the result that you get in the last local government election. And so they themselves have to do a little self-reflection in order to have more persons participate.
Do you think that young people are influenced by this bacchanal type politics, the up-and-coming generation of politicians? I mean, we're already in Parliament. We've spoken about them many times on this platform, but do you think that when the more senior or the more mature politicians are to call it a day, and these fresher faces were to take over the reins, do you think that they will continue to subscribe to this type of politics, or do you think that they would recognize it as not beneficial to TNT?
Oh, well, I think I'm not advocating for idealistic politics where it's clean and crisp and, you know, no one is throwing shade at each other. No, I'm not advocating for that, you know. But I think there's a line in how you would throw political pecan and even how you engage in bacchanal. Because you look at the younger members of Parliament and they have a little spice in them when they're debating. They have some sort of, they give pecan from time to time. I would hear the Minister of Education, and she has her classy way of giving political pecan alongside the Member of Parliament for Tabaquite, and you see their contributions in the House, and I don't think they go down the bacchanal type politics that we have seen in the past.
What's an example of, you've given an example of individuals who are healthy in their debates and pecan. What's an example of an individual or individuals who are practicing this bacchanal that the Ministry of National Security is referring
An
to.
example of the bacchanal?
Yeah.
I think when we get into a space of where we are fear-mongering the population, where we use sometimes race and religion to stir up a vote or to mobilize members for a cause. And even in the past 2 to 3 years, we saw that last local government election, we heard from 2 major, I would say, political giants in this country, where one was speaking about load up the matic politics and trying to, attract, I don't know what crowd, I don't know what survey was done to determine the target audience. And then you heard from another political giant, stand your ground is to give guns to one group to shoot. And so that when we get into a space like that, I mean, at this point, your papi showing me, right? At this point, you really think we are fools. So I don't know if it's me they're speaking to. Maybe I am not the target audience then. Maybe it might be that. But I am not alone. I have at least 70% of the country that I think I find good company with in being dissatisfied with the current status quo in terms of bacchanal politics.
Speaking about bacchanal politics, I think let's take a break. It's that time of the day where I need a doubles and a coffee.
Oh my God.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back after this.
Imagine a world where arguments don't exist. CICR is a full-service conflict resolution company that offers mediation training and workshops for all. In 2024, our 40-hour workshops are back, giving you all the tools you need to become a certified mediator in Trinidad and Tobago. Want to know more? Call us at 768-6778 or visit our website. Let's work together to make the world a better place.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for, it's called loss and damage. And we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region. Man
is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada in spite of the obvious difference in size.
Join me, Dr. Nalini Kokram, on What's Up Doc, where we discuss all your burning questions concerning health.
Trinidad and Tobago is among one of the highest risk group of patients that develop this form of genetic breast cancer.
What I'd like to take home from a short interview like this, screening. You must screen.
Because it's silent.
It's silent.
Yeah.
And because it's silent, you don't know it's there.
What's Up Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital.
That's the business. I'm not to do with that.
And I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break a balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
of the game.
no.
Let's go to the last part.
Welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. And after we had a sip of coffee, we are now able to welcome to the program again former national and regional youth parliamentarian. And I don't know what's going on with y'all. Y'all are retired early or something like that. Good morning, Ajay Alain. Welcome back to AM Prime.
Good morning, Keita, and good morning, Chris. And let me take this opportunity as well to say a happy birthday to Miss Latifah James. I know we're going to have a wonderful day today.
Happy birthday, Miss Latifah James. In fact, guys, as we start this conversation, you know, every week I introduce you all as former regional and youth parliamentarians, but, you know, I think I need to change the designations a bit. Like, for example, and it's a little bit of a joke, Ajay Alain's on WhatsApp, his name on WhatsApp. He's laughing because he knows exactly. If Ajay messaged me on WhatsApp, I didn't have his number saved in my device, so I went to save it immediately. And what pops up? The Honorable Ajay Alain, Order of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Ajay, my friend, listen. Hopefully, in a number of years to come, you know, you can keep it.
So fun fact, right? When I did the Youth Parliament alumni with Ajay, he was my Prime Minister, you know.
Oh!
I was Minister of Trade and he was the Prime Minister.
Oh, okay. So you all are the ones responsible for our future problems. All right, thanks for letting us know in advance. But anyway, gentlemen, thanks very much for being with us this morning. You know, let's start the conversation with more of a serious topic, and we're referencing what transpired last weekend in respect to the mass shooting in Kokorit. 12 people were shot at Phase 1 Powder Magazine. It was described as a bloody massacre by residents in the neighborhood. And I must say, it's very traumatic always receiving news like this. And one could only imagine what the families are dealing with. But let me ask your opinions. It's a debate that I've had on Talking Point previously with Sean Michael Small, but I'm curious to know, as two young individuals, starting with you, Ajay, do you think that Trinidad and Tobago is becoming immune to the violence that we have been experiencing? The feelings and emotions associated with it, are we becoming numb?
Let me firstly extend my condolences to the families that would have suffered losses in the murders in Tobago over the past couple of days. I mean, it's painful. I don't want to say we're getting numb to it, but it's beginning to feel like the norm in Tobago specifically. It's something that's hard to comprehend. It's hard to accept. It's hard to fully understand. Because it shouldn't be the norm. And I mean, I don't know, because I have persons who I would have gone to church with and they would have been shot in Scarborough broad daylight, and it's like, where are we going? I mean, Tobago in that state, it's something very, very hard to solve.
And Tobago has been facing quite a lot recently in respect to murders, particularly violence against women, but we'll get into that shortly. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I too would like to join Ajay in expressing the deepest condolences to the families who would have lost loved ones. I think losing any loved one is a very traumatic and difficult thing to go through, but in the way that they would have lost their loved ones, I think is even worse, and I cannot try to even imagine the amount of pain that they are in right now. And so our thoughts and prayers are really, really with them. Is Trinidad and Tobago becoming desensitized and normalized to violence? I think so. But I don't think that this is something that only today it happened. I think throughout the past maybe decade, we have seen a surge in violence in this country, a surge in crime in this country, and it is not a good place to be in. And looking on to our leaders who are supposed to, I think, treat with this, try to shift blame, at each other and politicize it for points. I think crime is not something that should be used as a political football. As a matter of fact, I see it as a huge opportunity right now to course correct, for leaders to come together and solve this in the best interest of Trinidad and Tobago. So I want to take this opportunity to echo a similar call that would have been echoed a couple months ago, which is, I am asking again for the Prime Minister and the opposition leader to meet. And I know that the Prime Minister said that they meet in Parliament, but I think they can meet outside of Parliament, possibly in a meeting to address this, because of course, Kamala Persad-Bissessar being a former Prime Minister and Keith Rowley being the current, Dr. Keith Rowley being the current Prime Minister, I think they both must have some sort of wisdom and shared wisdom.
Forgive my pessimism, I think it's a waste of time. I don't think it's going to be productive.
Here's the thing, we need something. Something is better than nothing. And what we have right now is a very divisive country. We have a very divisive parliament, and a country takes on the DNA, or we would say the organization takes on the DNA of its leader. And I'm not saying our leaders are violent, but I think we need some sort of coming together in this country and to have productive conversations in the interest of Trinbagonians.
Okay, you have coming together. You don't necessarily have productive conversations. Yes, Ajay, go ahead.
I want to jump in, and I want to be controversial this morning. So over the weekend, I took the opportunity to do some reading. So I went through the Tobago House of Assembly Act, the 6th schedule, and it reads, I'm not sure if you guys have a copy at Master Control that you guys can post. Matters for which the Tobago House of Assembly shall not be responsible. The President, National Security, I repeat, National Security, Foreign Affairs, Civil Aviation, Meteorology, Immigration, Legal Affairs, including the registration of legal documents, the Judiciary. And I want to make special mention of the Judiciary, Immigration, Foreign Affairs, and National Security. So if the Act clearly says that these are not the responsibility of the Tobago House of Assembly, why we have persons in the space nationally trying to associate this current scourge of crime in Tobago to the current Tobago House of Assembly?
You know, it's interesting that you said that, because I'm reading this morning a report from a press conference yesterday held by Kelvin Morris, and he says, in reference to, it's been 8 murders this year thus far in Tobago, and he was referencing the 2 women that were killed recently, the second being a mother of one who was killed yesterday morning. But he says, I'm calling for justice. I'm calling for each of us as Tobagonians. It cannot be that we blame the central government. It cannot be that we blame the Minister of National Security. It cannot be that we blame the THA, the Tobago House of Assembly. We cannot blame the police. Crime starts with every one of us. So I hear what you're saying. People on the ground here in TNT, the first instance is earlier with Christopher, the Minister of National Security. I have an issue where we don't reflect on ourselves. But at the same time, referencing what you would have mentioned earlier, it's a blame game all the time between politicians. Kelvin Morris took a different position yesterday. Ajay, I noticed that you were shaking your head a bit when I was mentioning these comments. You have a different opinion.
Yes, I do. And it's simply because we hear these talks, and number one, I'm fed up of hearing talk from a lot of these politicians. Let's go back to the Gulf Stream incident. So there was an issue where they were saying that the Coast Guard do not have any vessels. No problem. The last time the response we got from the Prime Minister was a boat ride to Tobago on board TTS Scarborough, if my memory serves me correct. So he boarded at Chagaramas and disembarked at the port of Scarborough. No problem. Following that, we saw the Gulf Stream incident. So a whole massive vessel of that size moves into Tobago waters under the radar. It created a lot of questions concerning national security and the security of the island and of the country. with these Coast Guard vessels. What did we see? A video with the Coast Guard putting out oil booms around the areas that are affected. All well and good, fine, no problem. Where is the condition and what's the state of that vessel? I mean, this is a government administration that is campaigned heavily on the UNC cancelling the OPVs. What have we seen since the OPVs have been invested? I mean, if my memory serves me correct, when we got these last 2 Coast Guard vessels from Hostel, I believe,
yes,
they were supposed to sign some treaty to have a repair or overhaul station from Hostel Station in Chagaramas. What's the update on that? We heard about the scanners and the port, and the Minister of Finance would always say, we can't get them instantly. Scanners not sit down waiting on us. It's almost a year and a half now. What's the update on the scanners at the legal port of entry? What's happening with our 360-degree radar system? I mean, we had some of the best technology in the Augusta Westland 139 helicopters that just park up right now in the Air Guard base with very, very good surveillance system. So what happened to these? Why we don't have them in service? I mean, these are some of the questions we need to ask. I mean, we're not laying the blame for crime, but we need to set up proper deterrents in place. I mean, the blimp, we know how the blimp used to operate. How many times you hear kidnappings in 20 minutes, they will tell you we're looking for X-color vehicle in X-color place. Let's sit down as a country and let's track back to see what's happening. Let's put politics aside and look at measures that we had that was working. We know about the blimp, we know the technology in the blimp. I mean, the last major murder in Tobago that was solved was the Prime Minister's friends.
Well, Chris, you know, Ajay has just given some examples and instances of which we have resources. They're not necessarily being utilized. The example that you also gave of the scanners at the ports, if I recall, I think the Minister of Works and Transport late last year said that they had the scanners that were ordered. It's on the way. We were supposed to receive it early this year. Handheld scanners were also a part of that order. And you're right, Ajay. Since then, I haven't heard any updates in respect to the scanners for the use of our ports.
I agree with Ajay that we need to put politics aside and have these conversations. But I can also equally agree that, because 2 things can be right at the same time, can be true at the same time. And I equally agree that there's a space to hold the government, the executive, to account for their duties. When he mentioned the scanners, you know, as I recalled in a budget previously where, I believe it was Standing Finance Committee, where there's a discussion surrounding vehicles having scanners as well, or having some sort of technology to scan. And I heard nothing about that to this date. I think that was a couple of years ago, and I heard nothing about that to this date.
And actually, I think even last year, Gary Griffith raised that point as well.
Yeah. So the delivery of services, or I should say the execution of the budget, I think has not been realized or fully realized throughout several budgets, which would definitely assist in fighting crime. But I also think what Kelvin said is also can be a solution as well, in that Trinidad and Tobago, we all play a part in it. The community plays a big part in crime in this country, in how we raise our children and how we treat with conflict and resolve that conflict in this country. So I think it's an all-of-government approach. I think it's an all-of-society approach. But there's a space to acknowledge room for improvement with the government, and I hope they can, you know,
bear in mind that our last few budgets in particular have not really focused on development expenditure, but more so sustaining our current expenses, right? And just bear that in mind. I want to go to a point, Ajay. You raised it a couple weeks ago. Chris raised it this morning in a different context when he was speaking about the opposition leader meeting with the Prime Minister, you know, to have discussions about national issues, particularly about crime. A couple weeks ago, you raised the point about the Chief Secretary being a part or having a seat in Parliament and meeting with the Prime Minister. In respect to the Tobago House of Assembly Act, what does it specifically reference of the duties and responsibilities of the Chief Secretary in conjunction with that of the Prime Minister, and even in respect to cabinet meetings?
Let me first say, at one of my previous jobs, my nickname was Mr. Documents. because I tend to prefer not to speak on an issue without having evidence or without being able to back up my statement. So allow me to read, I believe this is item number 30 in the Tobago House of Assembly Act. I'm not sure if you guys have a copy of it there at Master Control, so you could bring up, the members of the public could probably read along as well. And it reads, item number 30, the Chief Secretary may, if invited by the Prime Minister so to do, attend meetings of the Cabinet in order that the Chief Secretary may appraise Cabinet of the decisions taken by the Assembly in the exercise of its powers under this Act, which is the Tobago House of Assembly Act. But the Chief Secretary, and also to represent the interest of Tobago in any matter having or likely to have an adverse effect on Tobago. But the Chief Secretary shall not have the right to vote at any Cabinet meeting. And I want us to internalize 30 for a while before we move on to item 31. I mean, we have had several discussions on this program and across the country in terms of where we have a Tobago House of Assembly that is not the same political organization as that of the central government. And we often say, should we give the THA a seat or should we convert it to Tobago East and West seats? And we only have a limited number of Tobago voice. But clearly here in the Act, it made provisions for the Chief Secretary to be a part of Cabinet meetings. Has this ever happened before? I mean, I'm not saying that it has not happened, but is the public aware that this has happened before? That the Chief Secretary has been invited, whether it be in this administration or previous, to attend Cabinet meetings to represent the views of Tobagonians, where these issues would most likely have an adverse effect on Tobago, and just to keep Cabinet updated as to what's happening in Tobago. Has this ever happened?
Not that I recall. I mean, when has the Prime Minister and the Chief Secretary met? On a handful of occasions, if so much. The last being, of course, the joint press conference that they held in Tobago in respect to the Gulfstream vessel. That was the last that I recall.
And allow me, and this is a nice segue for 31. Allow me to read 31 as well, Keaton, and then we would clearly see what has been happening. So the Prime Minister and the Chief Secretary shall hold regular discussions with a view of formulating administrative and legislative mechanisms for the promotion of harmony in the affairs of Trinidad and Tobago. Allow me to read 30 one more time. The Prime Minister and the Chief Secretary shall hold regular discussions with a view of formulating administrative and legislative mechanisms for the promotion of harmony in the affairs of Trinidad and Tobago.
Do you recall a meeting like this ever happening?
So when I reflect on cabinets, because this provision, what Andrew is speaking about, it says may, right? And if invited by the Prime Minister to attend the meeting.
Well, yes, you have to be invited by the Prime Minister.
Yeah. Throughout our history, maybe in the past decade or so, we have always had in this country the Tobago seats being in government. Even with the People's Partnership, they would have had the Tobago West and the Tobago East seat. Under the current PNM administration, they also have the Tobago East and West seat. And the Tobago East and West MPs are also ministers. So I assume that the Cabinet believes, I'm assuming or presuming what they believe, that the representation is there at the Cabinet level. But when we have a conversation now that is saying the Chief Secretary should be invited, because there's a provision that allows for the invitation to be sent, then what we are really admitting as a country is that the Tobago MPs has been ineffective. They have been ineffective in representing the views of Tobago.
No, well, the role of the MP...
That's generally what we're saying.
The role of the MPs in Tobago and the role of the Tobago House of Assembly are very much different. They're completely separate.
But here's the thing, though. Even though it is completely separate, the Tobago West and Tobago East MPs, they have a seat in the House. So when we speak about legislative agenda and those things, they are supposed to consult as members of Parliament. The Chief Secretary is still a Tobago Tobago, you know, I'm sure he has to vote for either Tobago West or East, wherever he lives. So he needs to be represented as well. Outside, and if you understand what I'm getting at here, and I think at the cabinet level, that representation may be underrepresented when we get to a space of saying that the invitation, it should be sent. He should have a say because, you know, it seems as though they are not represented here. But I think it has to do because of political disputes. The current, and I hope it is not actually, that the current THA, it's not a PNM ran THA.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that is not the reason why they feel or they are underrepresented at the cabinet level or even at the parliamentary level.
So let's twist in the responsibilities or what the Chief Secretary or the Tobago Assembly is not responsible for. One of that is national security. But when we're speaking about Tobago's internal security, Ajay, is there a difference, in your opinion, between national security and Tobago's internal security?
No. No, simply because when you compare this to the Municipal Corporations Act, there is a provision made for municipal policing. And in Tobago, we do not have that capability. I know a bill was passed under former Chief Secretary Orvin London. It was sent to Cabinet. I don't know if it ever made it out. And you see, this is why sometimes when I hear ridiculous statements made by politicians in this space with the intention of hoodwinking the population, I get irritated by it. Because clearly here, if we look at the 6th schedule, it clearly says national security is not. It clearly says, it did not say Tobago security is exempted. It didn't say except internal security. The police or the security arms in Tobago does not have to answer to the Chief Secretary. I mean, the Coast Guard in Tobago has a building in Charlottesville where the officers would be accommodated. And there is no vessel station in Charlottesville. There was one commissioned a couple of years ago. We don't know what the outcome of the vessel is. And then we see fishermen going missing on a regular, and we can't get a response. Mm-hmm. So I understand what is trying to be implied, but if that is what we want to do, let's make it legal. It makes no sense, in my view, that we break the law to treat with lawbreakers.
Okay, so even if so the Tobago, Masters which the Assembly shall not be responsible for national security. Let's now tie that back in to Section 30 of the Act, where it says the Chief Secretary may, if invited by the Prime Minister, to do so, to attend Cabinet meetings in order for the Chief Secretary to appraise Cabinet of decisions taken by the Assembly or represent the interests of Tobago in any matter having or likely to have an adverse effect on matter. If the Tobago House of Assembly is not responsible for national security, why would the Prime Minister even bother to meet with the Chief Secretary on issues of national security, even if at this point in time Tobago has already recorded 8 murders for the year?
You see, and this is where I find politics is becoming a poison, to be very straightforward and very honest with you. Because I remember a couple of weeks ago, the Chief Secretary did meet with the Minister of National Security in Trinidad. I mean, we wouldn't know the outcome or the results of those meetings. But even in addressing the couple or the recent spate of murders, because a couple of them happened in his electoral district, a couple of the 6 shootings in Speyside happened not too far from the chief's personal residence. And he usually likes to spend weekends in Speyside, and he would say openly, he felt hurt and pained by it. Because we can't, how to put it, properly treat with issues in Tobago when you don't have boots on the ground. When last has the Minister of National Security visited Tobago? When last has he had a town meeting in Tobago outside of a political forum? When last have we seen the Prime Minister keeping a town meeting in Tobago? And this is one of the issues I intend to raise, if possible, at the constitutional reform meetings. Because I'm of the view, if not the Chief Secretary, the Deputy Chief Secretary should be a member of the National Security Council. Because there are certain intricacies in the process that we generally wouldn't take. Because crime in Tobago, to be very honest with you, from 8 murders by May, compared to 300-400 plus in Trinidad, automatically the resources would be sent, in my view, more towards Trinidad. And that is part of why we're having some of them issues, because policing in Tobago is completely different to policing in Trinidad. And law enforcement officers would tell you that. You can't use the same policing tactics in Tobago as you would use in Trinidad.
Chris, a lot has been said. The suggestion that if not the Chief Secretary, the Deputy Chief Secretary should be represented on the National Security Council is a very pertinent point, one that I can understand and one that I can accept. But again, you know, the THA Act does not necessarily provide for that. We are going through a constitutional reform exercise, and this is a suggestion that can be raised. But the reason why I say it does not necessarily provide for that is because national security is no business of the THA.
Correct. So when we're going to ascribe blame or we're going to ascribe accountability, listen, if this country had 0 murders and 0 crime, I'm just saying, the government would be taking all of the credit. You know, great is the PNM, they have, you know, been amazing, they fought crime, you know, they're so great at it. So equally, if it is that crime has surged, then you should also take the accountability for it. Don't blame everybody else. But there is a space for us to have a conversation as a country where I do believe that it's an all-of-societal approach, inclusive of the government and the opposition. And they have an executive approach as well as it relates to cabinet and the way they would spend money in a budget, and they have a responsibility to execute those figures and the things like scanners, simple things like that, simple things like police being, you know, having pen and paper to make reports and little things that they have a responsibility.
You're saying that in TNT we should have shared responsibility.
We should have shared responsibility.
But the government is going to argue that we have shared responsibility. You said it yourself. Shared responsibility in the sense that if anything good happens, the government is responsible for that. If anything bad happens, you and I are responsible for that.
Right. But here's the thing though. So we are agreeing, you know. We are agreeing. What I'm saying is that we have a shared responsibility, but in saying that society is an all-of-societal approach, it does not exclude the government from their duties to office and their responsibility as being an elected government. You know, they will put that this is a job, never forget that. When we speak to the schedule that Ajay spoke to about the THA not being responsible for national security, well, of course, it's in black and white, it's correct. But I do think there's a space for the THA and the cabinet to meet, to have discussions, to treat with issues that the THA is not responsible for. Because if the THA is not responsible for it, then who is responsible for it?
Chris, allow me to jump in here with the next portion from the Tobago House of Assembly Act. So this is item number 37, and I will read part 1 and part 2. This is item number 37. I'm not sure if I sent this one to
No,
the team.
I think we don't. Yeah, we don't have that one. But go ahead.
Let me forward it pretty quickly.
Go ahead, Ajay. You can speak about this in the meantime because we have to cut for news in a minute.
Right. So and it reads: where a secretary is assigned responsibility for a division of the assembly, he shall exercise general direction and control over that division. Nothing in this act shall affect mutual consultations between a minister and a secretary. Allow me to repeat, this is item number 37.2. Nothing in this act shall affect mutual consultations between a minister and a secretary.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, Ajay has presented the acts this morning, and bear in mind that with all these things, its interpretation is key. That's what lawyers are there for. They're going to take these acts, they're going to take the Constitution, and they're going to argue based off of their interpretations. But I'm glad we were able to have the act shared on screen with you to actually see what is written, what is available. And the act is available online. You can go and just search for it online and read the act. It's not difficult reading, it's not long, it's not hard to understand. Ladies and gentlemen, take the time and opportunity, as Ajay has done this morning, to present yourself with some education about Trinidad and Tobago. You know, don't worry about looking up who attended the Met Gala and who wore this dress and what. No. You have some things down here that you could read. Ladies and gentlemen, let's take a break here on AM Prime. We will return shortly.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
We are tackling the hard-hitting topics, some controversial topics, some topics we sweep under the rug. You don't always have to forgive in a relationship for it to move forward.
If it is you are in a situation where you forgive the person, but to the detriment of yourself, what are you really doing?
It is very uncommon for somebody in the younger age group to have dementia.
Atheists don't not believe.
Is that I can't disprove God, but you also can't prove God, so we cannot have a stalemate.
You'll focus on the woman who's being the victim,
right,
or the man is being the victim. We exclude the children.
Folks are trying to study the underlying brain mechanism to figure out how does this particular disorder happen in the brain? How is the brain processing this?
Don't worry about AI, worry about humans working with AI.
Are you willing to learn new skills to stay relevant for the future job market? That's the challenge that people are going to struggle with.
Here is the WESN News on the Hour. I am Sira Ali. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Mayara Amplia expressed concern over Kurab temple attack. One man is dead following an early morning shooting in Siparia. Regionally, Sri Lanka names star-studded team for the ICC Men's T20 World Cup. And internationally, FIFA faces legal threat over congested calendar. Now for the details. Mayara MP Roshan Paris said, as a society, we must unequivocally condemn the attack on the Kurab temple as a hate crime. In a release this morning, Paris said the recent deliberate destruction of the religious symbols and desecration of sacred spaces cannot be dismissed as mere vandalism or random acts of violence. It is a targeted assault on the Hindu community and an affront to the principles of tolerances and respect that we hold dear in TNT. He believes that the country cannot afford to shy away from labeling attacks on religious spaces of worship as hate crimes. Leroy Cervantes is dead following an early morning shooting in Siparia. The incident also left a second man nursing gunshot wounds. The deceased has been identified as 38-year-old Leroy Cervantes, while the injured man remains unknown. In regional news, all-rounder Wandindu Hasaranga will lead an experienced Sri Lanka outfit for the ICC Men's T20 World Cup 2024. Hasaranga, who was named as the Sri Lanka T20I captain December last year, will lead the team in the ICC Men's T20 World Cup 2024 in West Indies and the USA. Middle-order batter Charit Asalanka has been named as his deputy. Sri Lanka have banked on the experience of veteran Angelo Matthews, who returned to the T20I set up earlier this year in January after the absence of nearly 3 years. This will be Matthews' 6th T20 World Cup appearance, as he was part of Sri Lanka's victorious campaign in 2014. In international news, World Governing Body FIFA is facing the threat of legal action from World Players Union, FitPro, and the World Leagues Association, which includes the Premier League, if it continues with plans to host a 32-team Club World Cup at the end of next season. Report states that the global football calendar is now beyond saturation, to the point that national leagues are unable to properly organize their competitions while players are being pushed beyond their limits, with significant injury risk and impacts on their welfare. Well, that's it. News on the hour on WESN. I am Sira Ali. Thank you for watching.
The newest book is here, Closer to the Church, the debut novel by author and former Mayor Louis Lee Singh. Available at all the Home Store branches, Barataria, West Mall, Shogunas and C3 San Fernando. Paper-based bookshop 10 Nook Avenue, St. Anne's, WESN 30A Gattaca Street, Woodbrook, Metropolitan Bookshop, Ariapita Avenue, Woodbrook, and all RIK bookstores nationwide. Available online as paperback on Amazon.com and Kindle for e-readers. For more info, call 628-5835 or 389-6504. Also available from author Louis Lee Singh, I Used to Live in Heaven, Letters to My Granddaughters, and Local Government in Trinidad, Conspiracy Against the People.
Continuing the discussions this morning, ladies and gentlemen, we started with actually referencing the killings that took place last weekend and tying that back into national security. In fact, focusing more so on Tobago's role in national security, and the minority leader of the Tobago House of Assembly yesterday said we should not blame central government, we should not blame the Minister of National Security, we should not blame the THA, we shouldn't blame the police. It all begins with us. Now, you know, take his words as you would like to. He does have a point. In the context of the conversation, though, overall, we were able to reference the THA Act this morning, courtesy of Ajay. And Ajay, I do believe now that we have Section 37 of the Act to share with the public. So we can have that up on the screen now, where they can have a read. So Ajay, as you were saying, if you'd like to continue from here.
Yeah, Section 37, particularly 37.2, which says nothing in this act shall affect mutual consultations between a minister and a secretary. And I want to believe the chief secretary is also considered a secretary. He's a chief among them. So when we see this banter or this backward forward between ministers and secretaries, it's something that I'm generally not pleased with, because nothing in this act affects mutual consultations. What is so hard with mutual consultations? I mean, this is not the opposition leader and the prime minister, because there are many projects rolled out in Tobago done by ministries in Trinidad.
No, Ajay, I want to interject. You really think for a moment that the secretaries in Tobago, after campaigning on the fact that the People's National Movement Tobago Council did nothing for Tobago, 18 years, and they had struggles. So let me not necessarily say they did nothing for Tobago, but 18 years and Tobago was completely mismanaged, right? That's a better way of putting it. Basically campaigning off of that, swept the elections, a landslide victory. Even if you want to say that they won a few of their seats by 1 or 2 votes, it doesn't matter. It's still a landslide victory. At the end of the day, you think these secretaries want to meet with members of cabinet? You think the secretaries want to meet with ministers in order to deal with these issues? I get the impression that they rather handle the situation on their own and let the affairs of Tobago be that of theirs to govern and handle.
Listen, I would disagree with you here, and I would disagree sternly and firmly. Because let's look at the relationship between the Minister of Education and the Secretary for Education. Two lovely ladies. We don't see much back and forth between those ladies. I mean, we haven't heard much concerning the Minister of Tourism and the Secretary of Tourism. We see a very good thing going in agriculture. I mean, there are a number of very, very good relationships between ministers and secretaries, and I think that's the best way forward. Whether we like it or not, we have to communicate. I mean, I have a number of friends and I who do not share the same political position, but are they my enemies? No. Patrick Manning and Bas Diopandi was the perfect example of it. we could disagree politically, and there are issues that we have to agree on. We see it happening at the parliament. There are issues that the opposition may not wholeheartedly like, but they would support some of them. After consultations, they will make compromises. And I think that is where we need to head. We need to move away from this adversarial nature of some of these issues and just sit down as human beings and have conversations.
Mm-hmm. Well, Haji, you've raised a number of pertinent points this morning. But the thing is, let me turn back into what you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
You are not advocating for idealistic politics. You're not advocating for the practice of idealistic politics. Yet this sounds so ideal.
Mm-hmm.
So then how do you respond to what RJ is suggesting?
No, I think it's common sense what he's suggesting.
Okay,
right? I think it's common sense. Right? Listen, I've said this on the show before. Your political party would operate in a way where there are policies or pull and push factors. And your party really would set the tone for what you're going to deliver to the population as your political product, what it is. So it's a vehicle to get into government. The PDP would have been that vehicle. The PNM is a vehicle, and the UNC is also another vehicle. And so these...
With engine problems, but yes, go ahead.
Right. And so these vehicles have allowed these persons to get into government. Elections, or I should say general elections, is 1 day every 5 years, right? After you win that election, you are no longer, and this goes for the opposition as well, and even the minority leader in Tobago, you are no longer the PNM candidate for the seat, you know. You are the member of parliament for all of the people of, whether it is San Fernando West, whether it is Tabaquite, wherever it is, you are the member of parliament for everybody, not just PNM people, not just UNC people, not just the PDP or what it is now, TPP, no. So there is a space where you are expected, and I don't think this is an unrealistic expectation or an idealistic expectation. It's an expectation where you have to do your job. This is part of the job. And in doing the job, you have to work with other people, meaning the other people may be the Prime Minister, the other people may be different, because you're interested in politics. It's a competition. And so sometimes you lose. And so the PNM lost in Tobago. And so now they have to work with the THA. That's just doing your job. I don't understand why we have to beg sometimes, beg people to do their work in this country. I don't get it.
Well said, well said.
I will never get
Well
it.
said.
I don't know
Well
if we will
said.
get it tomorrow, but I hope one day we do get it, right?
Well, we do have an issue with productivity here in TNT, and a part of it is people refusing to accept their responsibilities. But gentlemen, I'm going to ask that we pause on this conversation, this particular topic, at this point. As we move forward, I want to continue focusing on Tobago and Tobago affairs, and I'm raising another question this morning, and I'm going to start with Chris this time, as you've been, analyzing all that has been building up leading to the elections next year. We have general elections next year, we have THE elections next year, and the following year we have local government. But you just raised that we had the PDP, now we have the TPP. In analyzing or assessing all that has been said since the formation of the TPP, and I even had an interview with Dr. Faith B. Israel on this platform about a month and a half ago. In your opinion, is there a difference between the TPP and the PDP, or is the TPP a reincarnation of the PDP?
Well, that's a good question, actually. It makes me think a little extra, I think, a little harder. But you see, the PDP had, let us never forget, the PDP had a good momentum. The PDP would have joined or evolved within the political space where there was almost no opposition, viable opposition force that had enough support to win a seat. So I would never negate that or take that away from Watson Duke. But the way in which, and you see, this is the adversarial politics that Adri was speaking about also. Sometimes you get so interested and dedicated to opposition-style politics that even when you do get into government, it is hard to operate with you because all you know to do is fight. And so there was that sort of internal spat You know, one person saying this is my party, next person saying well, leave the party. So you had, you know, disagreements. And so it would have caused the formation of another political vehicle. And to be quite honest, I was a bit concerned. I immediately thought, I was like, well, that's it there. Vietnam coming back, they mash up. It have no other way.
When you saw the PDP crumbling.
Crumbling, correct. But I think what Farley Chavez Augustine has been able to do alongside Dr. Faith B. Israel, alongside Zorisha Hackett, alongside a number of them, they have, Tashia Grace Boris, a number of them, and, you know, and each one of them, in my view, is a sort of breath of fresh air for politics in this country, is that they have shown this country that diplomacy, work ethic, and competence, hard work ethic, the people really do believe in it. And so they were able to anchor the ship, and I know that the anchor is the, I think the symbol for
yes,
TPP. And they were able to anchor, the ship was sinking, and they were able to anchor that ship. And I think that is a political lesson that even our politicians in Trinidad, the major political parties like the PNM and the UNC, they can learn a few things from, you know, the new generation of politicians. And they were able to do it, work ethic, commitment, even the way they formed the TPP. The way they formed the TPP was very important. It was very important in how the people would have come to them, in how the people selected the color, in how the people selected the name. This wasn't 2-3 people in one room come up with a name, a color, and say, here, take that, that's the product we're giving you. This came from the people. And so I think that sort of natural organization of persons comes together and say, we want Ole to stay, and we want a proper political vehicle and a home. That's what people are looking for right now, a political home. When we look at local government turnout, 30.34%, people are looking for a space, or at least I would assume, but at least we know this space we don't want to occupy anymore, or at least the kind of conversations we don't want to be interested in anymore. And so TPP has been able to be that breath of fresh air politics. I think it's very attractive, and I think they are a threat come the next election.
You mean the next THA election?
THA, and I also anticipate they may put forward persons for the general election, at least for Tobago East and Tobago West to seat.
I wonder if that was Ajay's camera shaking or if that was him bobbing his head.
No, because, and the reason I say that is because they would have a well-justified reason now to put that forward. Because if it shows that in Parliament they are underrepresented according to them, then they are justified in putting persons forward. It is a democracy, you know, they could do what they want. It's part of the process.
Tobago East and Tobago West, the main challenges will be the People's National Movement, and if the TPP puts up their candidates, because in no way am I discrediting other parties that exist. I mean, you have Tobago Forwards, though that seems to be
I think the idea as well. Yeah. But
I'm hearing, yes, Ajay.
You know, I want to jump in here. What people didn't realize, the PDP was an amalgamation of opposition forces in Tobago. Tobago Forward is almost non-existent.
Yeah, well, that's what I was just saying.
Tobago Forward was Pastor Terence Baines.
Yeah. No, that's exactly what I'm saying. You had Tobago Forwards and that happened. Now you have the instances of like the IDA, for example, the Innovative Democratic Alliance, and Dr. Denise Angus. Go ahead. Sorry, Ajay.
What? I think this is something political, you know. It and the breakaway that was caused by the IDA did more damage to the PNM than to the PDP. And that is what we have to look at. Because when looking at the numbers, if you have the IDA and the PDP into the battle now, we're up against the two more senior political organizations in Tobago, in the PNM and the TPP. You know, we kind of have a closer battle. But if we had one united opposition force and one PNM and a PNM breakaway, chances are the united opposition force would have gotten through. And I think that is what had happened at the last THA elections. So having now a breakaway PDP basically and a breakaway PNM, it kind of opens the door politically again.
I also wanted to say, when we had discussions in the Parliament surrounding the Tobago bill, I think that consultation process that would have happened through the parliamentary committees. And then, of course, when the bill was moved in the House, I think leader of the House would have moved that particular motion. At that time, the Farley-led Augustine executive felt that they were underrepresented, that their views were not echoed or advocated for. And so I think that may be something that will come up in the next general election, definitely within the Tobago space.
No, I know previously sorry, Ajay, yes, if you'd like to continue.
So the people but the opposition did a very poor job as well representing Tobago during that process. I must say it was poor, it was distasteful. Opposition did not do justice either, because your excuse is Dr. Diswan C. and Ho Choi Charles C. And sorry, the Honorable Ho Choi Charles said, and I'm like, as an opposition though, if you want to represent Tobago and have a Tobago position, why not keep your own consultations on the island of Tobago? Why not do your own research and present a case?
Listen, does the United National Congress even have a Tobago coordinator?
No.
Not anymore.
Right, so we understand that we wouldn't go there, right? What's going on?
No,
but, yeah, they don't have a Tobago
I know we don't have to dive into the topic.
I think their Tobago coordinator was a former senator, Tahaka Obika, and he has now joined the People's National
And
Movement.
then, well, I know that at one point, Vassan Barrett, a couple of years ago, when he was challenging for leadership, it was Skippy Barrington, Skippy Thomas, under his candidacy, who was going up for Tobago coordinator. But you're right. The looks I'm getting from these gentlemen this morning is Keaton don't open that can of worms this morning. I wouldn't go any further. But the United National Congress has completely pulled out of Tobago. Definitely.
And you see, that is where in UNC, you know, and we discussed this before, and I know that today's discussion is more on Tobago, but UNC is supposed to be a national party. And so representation within Tobago space is something that I think is needed for the UNC to be a national party and to inform the policy. Tobago exists, you know, Tobago's an island, you know, somebody living there.
No, I understand that, but you see, the thing is, sorry, that song "Nobody Lives There" came into my head. Forgive me. No, I'm just saying. You see, the thing is that the United National Congress is going to look at it this way: if TPP runs 2 seats in the next general election for Tobago, right? And probably 1 seat, you can argue, is definitely a swing. The other seat is closer than you think. A lot closer than you think, right?
Right.
But the United National Congress is simply going to see it as, we don't need to get involved. As long as the People's National Movement do not get those 2 seats, or at least lose one of those 2 seats, we can handle our affairs in Trinidad and form the next government. That's how the United National Congress is going to think, you know. They are going to leave that work up to the TPP. Now, what will be interesting is to see the working relationship, or even if there will be a strategic relationship between the UNC and the TPP. I don't think so, because the TPP have indicated that we are doing this on our own. We are a Tobago-based party for the people of Tobago. We're Tobago-centric, so I don't necessarily see that happening. What I am curious to look at, though, is whether or not the IDA in Dr. Denise Soifat Angus and the TPP will have any sort of strategic relationship or strategic alliance.
I think if you're in fact right with the argument that may be, you know, the UNC's argument, I think that may be a flawed argument to think that, you know, if the TPP wins there, that and somehow you benefit from that, because I don't see any accommodation before the election or post accommodation, so I don't see how the UNC will benefit from that. And if the suggestion is, well, they will just win the majority of seats, I think when we look at some seats, like in local government election, the Indian Walk Lengua seat, that would play a critical role for Maruga Tableland, for the UNC. So I don't see, and this conversation, I keep hearing a lot of people saying, well, when Farley and them take those 2 seats, they could join up with the UNC. I'm like, how? How are they doing that? There must be push and pull factors.
This is why I didn't say an alliance, but rather I copied the term, a strategic
alliance, you know,
okay,
a strategic partnership, okay. But I don't know.
You see, the thing is, the United National Congress, and I'm not saying that this is true, but sometimes when you have to put yourself in the position of the individuals within the UNC, even the PNM, their thinking is 2 more seats away from the PNM. That's 2 seats in Tobago. 2 more seats away from the PNM is beneficial to us.
But the Farley-led TPP has been very specific, and they are goal-oriented for Tobago. I think they speak about making Tobago the greatest little island in the world.
I would love to see a parliament with 3 different parties in it. I would honestly love to see a parliament.
So I don't know. You see, that the kind of productive conversations that I see coming out from the TPP, and then when I couple that with some of the main players in the UNC, I don't know how that political marriage will look.
Well, the current UNC anyway.
Chris, allow me to jump in here, Charles. Is that okay?
Go ahead.
I want to, again say, controversial statements provoke critical conversations. The campaign heavily in Tobago by the PNM is usually anybody who is opposed to the PNM is pro-UNC. And Tobagonians does not have a good relationship with the UNC over the past few years. I mean, we could all admit to it. Yes, during the People's Partnership, we saw some growth and some development, but we saw a lot of sidelining happening. Any political organization in Tobago that from the jump clear-cut associated with the UNC, they are not going to benefit politically. I mean, you're going to be shooting yourself in the foot before you even start a run in the Tobago space. And the PNM campaigns heavily on that. I mean, I received phone calls to say on the night of the election when I was standing at the UNC headquarters, they saw Tobago East and West on the board. And they were saying it's because the UNC had already pulled them in and the UNC was thinking that they would have gained it. And that created so much word on the ground talk in the Tobago space. So I think the UNC needs to see themselves, I don't want to say as a liability in Tobago, but they need to be a lot more strategic in the way they operate and they treat with Tobago and Tobago matters. Even if it simply means appointing a temporary senator from Tobago to represent Tobago views up in the Senate. I mean, they need to be a lot more strategic and show a lot more interest in the island and not just see Tobago as being a place for vacation.
But
because any political organization that openly professes an alliance with the UNC in Tobago is not going to be, not going to benefit from it politically.
Well, there is an opposition senator who is from Tobago, sitting currently, Senator Julian John. But my concern is this. We speak about the Prime Minister going to Tobago and having conversation. When last did the opposition leader been to Tobago? When last did the opposition leader? Because, you know, if she's interested in being the Prime Minister, she'll be the Prime Minister of not just Trinidad, you know. She'll be the Prime Minister of Tobago as well.
I guarantee you that you're going to see a release from the United National Congress within the next week saying that we're bringing consultations to Tobago. I guarantee that you're going to see
because
that.
Of what I said?
Because of what you just said.
Because of what I said?
I guarantee it.
You guarantee
I think you're feeding ideas, that's why.
I know, because if you are interested in being the Prime Minister of a country, you're not interested in being the Prime Minister of the island of Trinidad only. The country consists of a twin island. And so I'm genuine in my ask right now, you know. I'm genuinely asking, when was the last time Mrs. Kamla Prasad-Visesa been to Tobago, spoke with...
Even for vacation.
Well, you see, even for vacation, yeah.
Even for vacation.
You know, so that good intent politics is something that we really want to push forward for, you know. Even in this, you know, I attended just a Saturday the constitutional reform consultations with TYC in San Fernando. And that conversation about accountability, transparency, you know, extending your political arm to speak with us more was very much present, you know. That's what people want in this country, you know. When we say we don't see our MP, it's not because we want to see it invite in the kitchen for a little tea and biscuit, you know. We want to have real conversations with you about issues that affect us.
All right, so let me just, you know, we've got about 3 minutes left. I'm going to raise this last point this morning. And this is a question more particularly for Ajay. He was speaking about representation and Tobago views being represented. You know, you spoke about cabinet, you spoke about within Parliament, and you know you've referenced the THA Act this morning. Do you think that it is the PNM and the cabinet by extension who are relying on Lawrence Hislop to give those points of views? Lawrence Hislop being Government Senator Lawrence Hislop.
Why is he laughing?
I am curious to know his
That's a
answer.
joke? This is
That was a serious question, by the way. Just saying.
No, I understand exactly what you meant, but I think Tobagonians are foolish. What a lot of people fail to realize is we live in a generation of social media where almost everything is recorded and almost everything you can find it and you can pull up everything now. Clearly, we know the position that Mr. Hislop is taking. I mean, we trust the views of Dr. Remy a lot more than the views of Senator Hislop, to be very honest with you.
Wow.
No, that's the reality of Tobagonians. I mean, we might even support Dr. Eastlyn Mackenzie more than Senator Hislop, even if Dr. Mackenzie comes out of retirement and goes back into the parliament. Because, you see, even if you have a political position, you have to be able, in this Tobago space, to be true to yourself. Tobagonians are straightforward, true people. Tobagonians would tell you their mind. I think we saw it with the last series of consultations when the THA was going through different communities. We saw how blatant Tobagonians speak. If they don't like something, they would tell you they don't like it, whether it's in camera, it's in public, wherever. And I think he does not represent Tobago views, he represents Tobago Council of the PNM views. Let me throw one thing quick into the mix. I know we're wrapping up, and probably this might spill over. The issue with the Auditor General's report for me wasn't surprising, because we have a Tobago House of Assembly for years. Auditor General has been indicating she cannot verify the books, cannot find documents, going into departments and I can't find files. So when I saw it happen at the national level, I was willing to think charity begins at home and ends abroad. And we have a senator who will come out and would defend and say it's a computer glitch and it's a system challenge. When you know, since 2015 or 2012, somewhere around, the Auditor General cannot verify the accounts of the Tobago House of Assembly.
Well, this is where we're going to actually have to end the conversation this morning, because I feel like free to ask Ajay any more questions. Because he'll start to laugh and then he could give both. So anyway, guys, I want to thank you very much for this morning. As per usual, topics were planned and we didn't go into any of the topics that we planned. Right? So that is absolutely fine. That is good. But one can actually appreciate the fact that, you know, because of Ajay, we were able to share with you snippets of the THA Act. And I believe that is something that we will continue to do here on AM Prime on a Friday. Like I said, I was happy this morning because it's Friday. These gentlemen make it a lot easier for me. If you realize, I asked probably the simplest of questions, and these gentlemen just say, all right, you know what, let's rev it up a bit, you know. Ajay, thank you very much, my friend, once more for joining us on the program. We look forward to the next.
Hope to be in the studio live very soon.
Well, you know, I'm feeling bad. He said, when was the last time Colonel Busabi came to Tobago? I think Chris and I may have to make a trip to Tobago to do an episode of AM Prime. Yeah? Anyway, my friend, we'll talk again soon. Chris, thank you very much for your presence, as always. It really has been a pleasure. We did start on the conversation this morning by speaking about the Bacchanal and the type of Bacchanal politics that we have in TNT, and Ajay brought the Bacchanal with him. But it's good Bacchanal. It's educational and informative Bacchanal.
A little pecan here and there won't kill nobody.
Yeah.
But we want substance base. And what Ajay was able to present to us this morning was substance. Clear, clinical, concise, black and white documents, you know, not old talk where you're trying to stir up or mobilize some vote, which we discussed. So I think this was a very productive conversation. You know, I always talk about safe spaces, productive conversations, and substance. So I was very pleased as well.
And ladies and gentlemen, we wish you a great day ahead, a fantastic one, and hopefully a safe weekend. And all that you do, may you be honest and may you be true. I should probably copyright that, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Keith. We'll see you again very soon. Bye-bye.
WESN
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.